Tanya for the 10th of Iyar, but first the story. At a time when Russia was controlling Poland, or at least big portions of Poland, the Poles desperately wanted to get control of their country back, and there were lots of revolutions and lots of rebellions. And at one particular point, a few thousand Poles managed to make a massive uprising against the Russian overlords, and they conquered back a few Polish cities. And once they had kicked the Russian out of the city, they wanted to know what to do next, and they decided the best thing to do would be to take out their vengeance against the local Jews that lived in those cities that had done nothing wrong, but they were the people who they were going to make suffer. They went around killing and pillaging and doing every single crime that they possibly could do. And once they were finished, they realized they needed an excuse of why they did it, and they decided they're going to pick one Jew and make him the scapegoat. Somehow it was his fault. He's a criminal, and that's the reason why we did it. And they picked a very wealthy and influential Jew by the name of Reb Shimshon. This Reb Shimshon was a wildly successful person, but he was also an extremely kind person who had done so much goodness and kindness to all the people of the city, and they picked him as a scapegoat. They took him, they imprisoned him, and they said they're going to hang him. People begged on his behalf, but the captors said, no, he's the reason that we had the pillaging, and he needs to die for his crimes. On the actual day of the execution, one of the local malamdim, one of the local teachers, ran into shul and started telling people, we have to do something. They're going to kill him today. And they said, listen, we tried everything. There's nothing to be done. And then Reb Nochum, the malamed, he told the people there, how much good has Reb Shimshon done for us? The least we could do is try to get him out of this. He's been so kind to us. He's been so generous to us. He's been so gentle with us. We have to do something. We can't just let nothing happen. But everyone said, listen, we tried. What are we going to do? It's a bunch of criminals that are running the city right now. There's nothing to be done. So he said, something has to be done. I'm going to do something myself. So he ran to the marketplace where everyone had already gathered to watch the execution. He ran up to the front and he announced, everyone's making a mistake. The real criminal is me. I'm the spy. I'm the one that did all the wrongdoings. Reb Shimshon is innocent. Now, they all knew that it was all, the people that were in charge knew that it was all trumped up charges and it wasn't real. So they took him and they threw him off the stage. They said, you're just making nonsense, because they knew the whole thing was nonsense. But he insisted. He ran up. He took the noose off Reb Shimshon's head. He threw it on his own neck and he said, I'm the one that needs to die. You need to kill me. And he made a massive commotion. People started rushing up and trying to remove him and fighting with him. And he was holding the noose around his neck. And it turned into a few minutes, a whole commotion. And just as they were removing the noose from his head, suddenly people started screaming, the Russians are coming. The Russians had gathered their military and they were now coming to reconquer their cities. And the entire crowd ran. And the only two people left in the marketplace was Reb Nochum and this Reb Shimshon, both of them absolutely shocked that their lives had been saved. The Tanya so far, over the past few chapters, we've been talking about different types of love. Now, Alter Rebbe is giving us what's wildly innovative and creative, different things to think about that can inspire us if we want to have a genuine love and a genuine fear for Hashem when doing mitzvahs. And we want to motivate us, especially in the love department, so we could do a mitzvah, not just that it goes to the world of Yitzhak, but it goes to the world of Bria, that we actually have intellectually stimulated love. The Alter Rebbe gives a whole bunch of ideas. The Alter Rebbe says, for example, the love of life itself, and realize that Hashem is the source of our love and repurposing that towards Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe explains what that means. Or like a son who strives for his father and his mother. And the Alter Rebbe explains what that means. Or, for example, having a pity on the descent of the soul. And the Alter Rebbe explains how that works in the previous chapter. And in today's, in today's chapter, chapter 46, the Alter Rebbe introduces us to our brand new type of love. And this love is called as an identical face reflecting back from the water. That's the way to describe the love. Kamayim apanim kain leva adam el adam. That just like a person sees identical mirror image when they look into the water, so too reciprocal love works in that way. How does it work? In yesterday's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explains that this firstly is a love that's applicable to every single person. And it's based on the idea that if you are loving towards someone, that person will eventually start to love you back. And so much more so if the person who is doing the loving is so much greater than the recipient of the love. If it's a king who's being so kind to a nobody, a person, a disgraceful creature who's cast in the dunghill, and he then invites him, in yesterday's Tanya explains to us, he raises him, he brings him into the palace, and he brings him to one chamber, to the other chamber, and he hugs and embraces and kisses him with his entire heart and soul. How much love will that horrible, the disgraceful creature have towards the king, especially since their social standing is so different? The disgraceful creature understands that it's not just his buddy that's being kind to him, it's someone that's far beyond his station that's being kind to him. And the Alter Rebbe says, in today's Tanya, continues directly from this thought, והנה ככל הדברים האלה, ככל החיזיון הזה, וגודל יוסם מאוד בכפל כפליים לאין case, עשה לנו אלוקינו. All the imagery that Alter Rebbe gave us in yesterday's Tanya about the king being so kind to the nobody in the street who's cast in the dunghill and giving him so much love, and that man now has reciprocal love towards the king. That is what our life is like with Hashem, but just infinitely, infinitely many more times over. Because firstly, Hashem's greatness is beyond comprehension. It's not like a king to a disgraceful creature. It's Hashem to us. Hashem's greatness is beyond comprehension. Hashem surrounds the world and encompasses all the worlds. Hashem is so much greater than the king in this analogy. And Hashem has so many chambers and angels and myriads upon myriads of angels that are absolutely infinite. The Gemara actually asks about the amount of angels. We have the discrepancy in the description of Hashem's angels. It's written, Hayesh Misbeh Legedudav. Is there any number to Hashem's angels, to the amount of regiments of the angels of Chesiv? But it's also written about Hashem's angels. It's written thousands of thousands minister to Hashem, and tens of thousands times tens of thousands stand before Hashem. So now one verse seems to imply that there's infinite amount of angels. The other one seems to imply that there is a certain set amount, a tremendous amount, but still a set amount. Umishani, the Gemara answered, every single regiment of angels that Hashem created do have a finite number. A tremendous large number, but still a finite number. How many regiments, how many groups of angels? Absolutely infinite. And the Chulam, Kamikal, and Mamash Chashivin, all of them are absolutely nothing compared to Hashem. Over Taylor Messias Mamash, and they entirely nullified in absolute existence. In chapter 20 and 21, the Alter Rebbe explained about the entire span of the universe. What is the greatest span that exists within the universe? And the Alter Rebbe explained the 5 different degrees. But what we're trying to say here is the difference between Hashem and his angels is far beyond whatever span of difference when we're talking about the person himself compared to the intellect that drives his emotions, that drives his thought, that drives his speech, that drives his action. The difference between all of those, from the action until the actual person himself, Hashem's difference between himself and the angels is far beyond that. And these angels are so great and powerful. And yet their connection to Hashem, all of them ask, where's Hashem's place of glory? And they answer their own question, Hashem fills their world with his glory. The Jewish people are the focus of Hashem. That's the place of Hashem's glory. Because Hashem forsook the higher and the lower worlds and creatures. And Hashem only chose the Jewish people. Again, we're trying to mirror this analogy we gave yesterday, talking about the king's love towards this despicable creature, and now how much love this despicable creature owes back to the king. Now we're trying to explain it between ourselves and Hashem, and we're realizing that the gap between the king and the despicable creature in the analogy we gave yesterday is barely anything compared to Hashem and ourselves. Hashem forsook the higher worlds and lower creatures, all these incredible angels, and he chose the Jewish people, and he took us out of the disgusting place of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, and took us out of Egypt, which is a place of filth and impurity. Lo yedei malach v'lo yedei saraf yedei chulo. It wasn't through an angel or through any other types of messages. Hashem himself took us. He didn't send messages. The king himself went to Mitzrayim and took the Jewish people out. Because like it's written, Hashem said, I descended to save you from the hands of the Egyptians. Amen. And it wasn't just that Hashem saved us and took us, this despicable creature, out of Egypt. Hashem also made us close to him and attached himself to us. Hashem gave us kisses. And what's the kisses? The kisses represent the word of Hashem, which is halacha. And a fusion, a connection of the spirit with the spirit. What is that? It's our ability to learn Torah. Hashem gave us a Torah, enabling us to learn it, which is like the spirit of Hashem fusing with the spirit of ourselves. Because the Torah is the will and the wisdom of Hashem. The kul echad mamash, Hashem and his wisdom and his will are entirely one. The gamachin nish chibuk, and like in the analogy where the king hugs the nobody, Hashem also hugs us. What is this? Torah mitzvahs are like the hugging of Hashem. Why? Because hugging involves hands, arms, a body and an arm. Which is the fulfilling of the mitzvahs with the 248 arms. Because of 248 organs of the king represent the 248 positive mitzvahs. For their klal, and generally speaking, you could divide these into three different sections, the mitzvahs into three different sections, but also the body into three different sections. Yamin, usmal, the right, the middle, the left and the middle, shehem chesed din rachamim, which are chesed, din, gevura, and rachamim, and chain, rein, v'guf, which are the two arms of the body. So to summarize today's Tanya, we're continuing directly off the analogy we gave yesterday about the way the nobody is able to have love for the king when he appreciates how much the king has done for him. In our case, continues Alter Rebbe today's Tanya, we're the nobody. Hashem took us out of Egypt, took us literally out of the dunghill, and then brought us into chamber within a chamber and gave us a spirit, a connection of the spirit of the spirit, hugs and kisses, which represent our ability to connect to Hashem through Torah and mitzvahs and to learn Torah, etc. And that's when we start to think about this, continues Alter Rebbe, we start to realize how much Hashem loves us. When we realize how much Hashem loves us, we'll be able to have a reciprocal love towards Hashem. Thank you so much for joining the Tanya. Tanya is in Nishmas 5 of Iyar ben Yamin Alevi, Moshe Aaron HaKoyim ben Yosef, Ruben ben Emmanuel, Aaron ben Avram, Esther bas Moshe Menachai, Simchas bas Shem Rosi, Eliyahu Moshe ben Avram, Sarah Miriam bas Chaim ben Yamin, Chaya Mushka bas Shimon Avram, and Fush Shem for Yaakov ben Aaron, Ben Asbat Rav Kedva Chai Moshe ben Esther ben Achmad ben Edom, Leah bas Yana, Yosef ben Shlomo Messiah, and no nothing before Shem. Have a wonderful and very successful day. Thank you so much for joining.